Nietzsche wrote that man is something to be overcome, and the precision of that word matters enormously, because he did not say defeated or destroyed but overcome, meaning that the version of you standing here today is not your final form, but the raw material from which a higher version must be built, and building him requires the deliberate killing off of who you currently are. This is not gentle self-improvement, the polite adding of good habits to an unchanged foundation. It is a process of overcoming, of transcending and leaving behind the lesser man so that the greater one can emerge, and it demands that you treat your current self not as something to preserve but as something to surpass. The man you are now, with his weaknesses and his comforts and his limitations, is the caterpillar, not the butterfly, and the transformation into what you could become requires that the caterpillar cease to exist. Overcoming yourself means being willing to destroy the man you are in service of the man you could be. Every temptation, understood correctly, is an offer to remain exactly who you already are. A quiet invitation to stay the current version of yourself rather than becoming the higher one, which reframes each moment of temptation from a simple question of pleasure versus restraint into something far more significant, a choice about which man you will be. When the temptation presents itself, it is not merely offering you a momentary indulgence. It is offering you the chance to keep being the person who indulges, to reinforce the identity you are supposedly trying to leave behind, to remain the caterpillar for one more day. The comfort, the shortcut, the easy pleasure, each one is a bid to keep you where you are, and accepting it is accepting your current self as final. This is why temptation is so much more consequential than it appears, because every yes to it is a vote to remain unchanged, a small surrender of the transformation, a choice to stay the man you claim you want to overcome. Every refusal, conversely, is a small act of self-overcoming, a moment where you kill off a piece of the lesser man and take one step toward the higher version, which means that resistance to temptation is not mere denial but active creation, the literal process by which the greater self gets built. Each time you refuse the offer to remain who you are choosing to become someone new, casting a vote for the higher man over the current one, performing in miniature the overcoming that Nietzsche described. The refusals accumulate, each one a small death of the old self and a small birth of the new, until through thousands of these tiny acts of self-overcoming, you have actually transformed into a fundamentally different person. This is the mechanism of becoming, hidden inside the ordinary moments of temptation and refusal, and understanding it changes everything, because you realize that every time you resist, you are not just avoiding a bad choice, but actively constructing the man you want to be, one refusal at a time. The self you are trying to overcome will fight to survive, because everything that exists resists its own destruction, and the lesser version of you has powerful weapons, the cravings and rationalizations and comfortable habits that all serve to keep him alive against the higher man trying to replace him. The temptations feel so strong precisely because they are the survival instinct of the self you are trying to kill. The current man fighting for his existence, deploying every desire and excuse he has to prevent the overcoming that would end him. This is why self-overcoming is so difficult, because you are not fighting an external enemy, but the deeply rooted survival drive of your own current identity, which does not want to die and will resist its death with everything it has. Recognizing this reframes the struggle, because you understand that the intensity of temptation is not a sign of your weakness, but a sign of the old self's desperation, its fight to survive the overcoming, and every refusal weakens him while every surrender feeds him. Fate, in Nietzsche's frame, is not the passive thing most people imagine, not what merely happens to you, but something far more active and self-determined, the man you decide to become, through the accumulated pattern of what you refuse, which means you are not the victim of your fate but its author, writing it through every choice between remaining and overcoming. The conventional idea of fate as external destiny, as forces acting upon you, gets inverted entirely, because here fate is internal, self-created, the sum of your refusals and surrenders, the identity you forge through the thousands of small choices about which man to be. You are choosing your fate right now, in this moment of temptation, deciding through your response whether you will remain the current self or overcome him, and the pattern of these decisions across your life becomes the destiny you inhabit. This is why the man who masters temptation controls his fate, because fate is nothing other than who you become, and who you become is determined by what you refuse. The connection between temptation and fate reveals why these seemingly small moments carry such enormous weight, because each apparently minor choice about whether to indulge is actually a choice about your entire trajectory, a decision that either advances or halts the overcoming, that determines the whole direction of your life. The temptation feels small, a single cigarette, a single skipped workout, a single surrender, but through Nietzsche's lens it is never small, because it is a choice about whether to remain the current self or become the higher one, and that choice, repeated, becomes your fate. This is why you cannot afford to treat any temptation as insignificant, because there are no insignificant choices in the process of self-overcoming, only advances and retreats, each one shaping the man you are becoming, and therefore the fate you are creating. Understanding the stakes transforms your relationship to temptation, because you stop seeing it as a minor test of discipline and start seeing it as what it truly is, a decision about your destiny. The higher man you are trying to become does not exist yet, and can only be brought into being through your refusals, which means he depends entirely on you, on your willingness to kill the current self through the daily acts of overcoming that give him life. And every time you surrender to temptation, you abandon him, leaving him unborn. He is a potential waiting in the choices you have not yet made, and only your consistent refusal of the offer to remain who you are can call him into existence. This gives your struggle against temptation a profound purpose, because you are not merely resisting for the sake of resistance, but midwifing a higher version of yourself who cannot be born any other way, whose existence hangs on whether you overcome or surrender. How this changes your fight is that every refusal becomes an act of creation rather than mere denial, the bringing forth of the man you could be, and every temptation becomes an opportunity to advance his birth, so that discipline transforms from grim restriction into the meaningful labor of self-creation.
Miyamoto Musashi fought 60 duels and never lost one, and after a lifetime of combat he wrote a final chapter called The Void, in which he argued that true mastery was never about controlling the enemy at all, but about becoming so complete in yourself that the enemy finds nothing to grab onto, no opening, no weakness, no handle by which to take hold of you. This is a profound inversion of how most people understand victory, because they imagine winning as overpowering the opponent, dominating him through superior force, When Musashi understood that the highest form of victory comes from a completeness in yourself that leaves the opponent with nothing to work with, the master swordsman did not defeat his enemies by being stronger. He defeated them by being whole, by presenting no gap for their attack to exploit. Applied to your own struggles, this changes everything, because it suggests that the way to conquer what assails you is not to fight it harder, but to become so complete that it has nothing left to seize. Your cravings grab you because there is still a hook inside you, an emotional attachment that gives the temptation something to grip. And this is the crucial insight that explains why white-knuckling your way past desire never produces lasting freedom, because as long as the hook remains, the craving has a handle by which to seize you again and again. The desire does not overpower you through its own external strength. It takes hold of you through the attachment that still lives inside you, the part of you that still wants it, still values it, still secretly clings to it, even as you try to resist. This is why resistance alone fails, because it leaves the hook in place, fighting the craving's pull while doing nothing about the internal attachment that gives it purchase. Understanding this reframes the entire problem, because you realize that the craving's power over you is not really the cravings at all, but your own attachment, the hook you have not removed, and that, as long as that hook remains, no amount of resistance will free you. Reroam the hook and the craving passes through you like wind through an open window, finding nothing to catch on, no attachment to seize, no part of you that still wants it enough to be moved so that the desire arises and then simply passes, unable to take hold. This is the state Musashi pointed toward, the completeness that leaves the enemy nothing to grab, applied to the inner enemy of temptation, where you have so thoroughly removed your attachment to the thing that when the craving comes, it moves through you and dissipates rather than seizing you. The desire still appears, because desires will always appear, but it no longer lands, no longer hooks, no longer drags you toward it, because the internal attachment that once gave it power has been dissolved. This is a fundamentally different experience from resisting temptation, because there is no struggle, no white-knuckling, no effort of will, only the effortless passing of a craving that finds nothing to hold on to, and it represents a freedom that resistance can never achieve. White-knuckling your way past desire is exhausting and ultimately doomed, because it relies on a finite resource, willpower, that depletes with use, and it leaves the underlying attachment fully intact, which means the craving retains all its power and will return again and again to test a resistance that must eventually fail. The man gritting his teeth against temptation is fighting a battle he can only lose in the long run, because he is expending enormous energy to resist a pull he has done nothing to actually reduce, and sooner or later his willpower will run low, and the craving, still fully hooked into him, will win. This is why resistance-based approaches to temptation produce only temporary and precarious victories, because they never address the hook, only fight its effects, leaving the fundamental attachment in place to reassert itself the moment vigilance lapses. What this means is that the entire strategy of white-knuckling is flawed at its root, a losing approach that mistakes the suppression of a symptom for the curing of a disease, and that lasting freedom requires something entirely different. Becoming the void that desire cannot land in is that entirely different thing, a transformation not of your resistance but of your very self, so that you become someone in whom the craving finds no home, no attachment, no hook, and therefore passes through without effect. This is not about fighting desire. but about transforming yourself to the point where the desire has nothing to grab, where your completeness leaves no opening for it to exploit, where you have become like Musashi's master, presenting no weakness for the enemy to seize. The void is not emptiness in the sense of lack, but completeness in the sense of wholeness, a state so full and self-sufficient that the craving's offer holds no appeal, its hook finding no attachment to catch. To become this void is to transcend the entire struggle with temptation, moving beyond the exhausting battle of resistance into a state where the battle simply does not occur, because there is nothing in you for the temptation to fight. This is the permanent freedom that resistance can never provide. This transformation is slow and deep, not a technique you apply, but a fundamental change in who you are, which is why it cannot be rushed or forced, and why most people never achieve it, preferring the illusion of quick fixes to the patient work of genuine transformation. The removal of the hook, the dissolving of the attachment, the becoming of the void, all of this happens gradually, through deep inner work that reshapes your relationship to the thing you crave. And there is no shortcut, no instant method, only the slow, patient transformation of the self. This is harder than white knuckling in one sense, because it demands more than mere effort of will, requiring a deep change in who you are. But it is easier in another sense, because once the transformation is complete, the struggle ends entirely, replaced by an effortless freedom. Why this matters is that you must be willing to undertake the slow, deep work rather than seeking the quick fix, understanding that only the patient transformation produces the permanent result, and that the shortcuts everyone reaches for lead only back to the endless, exhausting battle.
Every temptation is a trade, even when it pretends to be a small pleasure. Nothing enters your life for free. The scroll costs focus, the binge costs sleep, the cheap meal costs the body you said you wanted, the lazy morning costs momentum, the angry reaction costs peace, the avoided task costs self-respect, the easy lie costs trust. A temptation never announces the full price at the door. It only shows the comfort, the taste, the relief, the escape, the little hit of pleasure that makes surrender feel harmless. The invoice arrives later. It arrives in the mirror, in the unfinished project, in the weak bank account, in the repeated apology, in the quiet disgust after another private promise dies. A man must learn to see the hidden exchange before he pays it. Every yes feeds one future and starves another. There is no neutral indulgence when the same energy was supposed to build your life. The lie temptation tells is that both versions of you can survive. It whispers that you can keep the comfort and still become dangerous. It tells you the dream will wait while you entertain weakness for one more evening. The old self wants you to believe the price is tiny because the damage is not immediately visible. One skipped session does not destroy the body. One wasted night does not kill the business. One uncontrolled meal does not ruin the discipline. That is how the trap stays alive. The cost hides inside accumulation. A single drop means little. 1,000 drops carve stone. The future you want is not destroyed by one dramatic betrayal. It is starved by hundreds of small permissions that looked harmless because each one arrived alone. The pattern does the killing, not the individual event. A man claiming he wants greatness while feeding every appetite is trying to run two governments inside one kingdom. One government demands training, focus, restraint, patience, truth, and work. The other demands pleasure now, escape now, comfort now, validation now, stimulation now, relief now. They cannot both rule. One will become law. The body will reveal which government won. The calendar will reveal it. The bank account will reveal it. The output will reveal it. The mind will reveal it in the form of either confidence or shame. Words do not decide the ruler. Repetition does. The version you feed today becomes stronger tomorrow, and the version you starve becomes quieter. That is simple, brutal, and unavoidable. You are voting all day, not with speeches, but with actions that either crown the future man or keep the weak one alive. Look at temptation closely, and you will see that it usually arrives at the exact moment growth becomes uncomfortable. The work gets difficult, then the phone becomes attractive. The body feels tired, then skipping starts sounding reasonable. The mind faces a hard decision, then entertainment appears like a soft bed. Loneliness presses, then attention from the wrong person starts looking acceptable. Stress rises, then food, alcohol, fantasy, or gambling begins calling itself relief. Temptation is often not random desire. It is an escape route appearing beside pressure. That means every urge contains information. It tells you where the edge is. It tells you where the old self expects surrender. It marks the point where discipline must become real instead of decorative. A man who studies temptation learns the battlefield. He stops being surprised by his own weakness because he knows when it will attack. The future version of you is not built in the dramatic moments you enjoy imagining. He is built in the small refusals that no one sees. Refusing the app when boredom arrives. Refusing the second plate when the body has had enough. Refusing the bed when the alarm rings. Refusing to react when pride wants a fight. Refusing to spend money that should become freedom. Refusing to quit when progress looks too slow to reward the ego. These refusals do not feel glamorous. They often feel plain, irritating, and almost invisible. Yet each one sends a message to the nervous system. Command is returning. The mind begins learning that desire can speak without being obeyed. That lesson is the beginning of power. A man who cannot say no to himself will eventually be owned by whatever can stimulate him. Saying no to temptation is not a loss when the no protects something higher. The weak mind hears refusal and thinks deprivation. A disciplined mind hears refusal and thinks investment. The cake refused is not just cake refused. It is respect for the body. The night of scrolling avoided is not merely entertainment denied. It is sleep protected, focus protected, tomorrow protected. The money not wasted is not pleasure lost. It is options preserved. The angry message not sent is not weakness. It is control maintained. Every strong no hides a greater yes behind it. Yes to health. Yes to clarity. Yes to dignity. Yes to skill. Yes to peace. Yes to the man you said you were becoming. Temptation wants you to stare only at what you are losing. Discipline forces you to see what you are saving. The reason this matters is that identity follows feeding. Feed the impulsive self, and he becomes louder, more confident, more demanding, more skilled at persuasion. Feed the disciplined self, and he starts taking territory. At first, he may be weak. He may only win 1 hour, 1 meal, 1 workout, 1 difficult conversation, 1 clean evening. Yet victory builds appetite for more victory. The mind starts collecting evidence that it can resist. This evidence changes how a man carries himself. He stops feeling like a hostage to moods. He stops fearing every urge as if it is a command. He begins trusting his own word again. That trust is not built through motivation. It is built through repeated moments where temptation offered comfort, and the man chose construction instead. A dangerous mistake is trying to fight temptation only through emotion. Emotion changes too quickly. A man feels strong at noon and weak by evening. He feels committed after a speech and negotiable after stress. He feels disciplined after planning and hungry for escape after friction. Structure must do what emotion cannot. Remove the easiest access. Keep the phone away during work. Do not keep the food in the house if it keeps defeating you. Block the sight that steals your night. Put training clothes ready before the morning argument begins. Set rules before desire starts negotiating. Choose environments that support the man you are building. Temptation wins many battles because people keep meeting it unprepared and then calling the defeat a lack of willpower. Willpower matters, but a wise commander does not leave every gate open and then praise himself for fighting invaders.